My name is Emily Granger, and the night I stopped paying my sister's mortgage, I also shattered a lie that had kept me invisible for 33 years. When my father looked across the dinner table and asked Vanessa why the bank had called, I didn't flinch. I just folded my napkin, met his eyes, and said, "Because you've been thanking the wrong daughter all along. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. I'd love to see where you're tuning in from. And if you've ever been the forgotten one in your own family, this story might hit close to home. Let's begin. It started in the kitchen, where all betrayals simmer before they boil over. The only light was the under-cabinet glow casting a sleepy yellow on the laminate counters. I stood barefoot, reheating leftover soup I hadn't made but had paid for, spoon in hand, when I heard the door creak. Vanessa slipped in, wrapped in a silky robe that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe for the month. She smelled like hairspray and something expensive like guilt, if guilt had a scent. She whispered, her tone honeyed but shaking at the edges. I need your help, and I mean real help. I didn't answer right away. Vanessa had always talked like that, on the edge of a whisper, as if her voice alone wasn't manipulative enough. I stirred the soup slowly. She stepped closer, eyes wide like a doe trying to look innocent. The mortgage, I'm behind. Her voice cracked just enough to sell the drama. 3 months, actually. I froze, spoon midair. Wait, what, how? Her fingers fluttered as if brushing away invisible smoke. The blog revenue's been low. Brands are taking forever to pay, and mom and dad, they'd freak if they knew. I don't want to give them a reason to worry. There it was. The reason she was here in the dark, speaking like we were in some spy movie. I just need a little time, she continued. If you could cover it just until I catch up, please, Em. It's not like you have a family or kids, just you and your spreadsheets. Then she added, with that practiced tilt of her head, you're the only one I trust with this. I stared at her. The hurt should have shown, but it didn't. I knew better. Vanessa has always been a master of disguises. At 6, she cried over a dropped ice cream and got me grounded for pushing her. At 17, she stole my prom shoes and told mom I lost them. And somehow, it always worked out in her favor. Always. You're not going to tell them? I asked carefully. She smiled, soft and triumphant. Of course not. Why make them anxious? That smile. That's when I knew she never planned to tell them. She expected me to be her secret solution, just like always. I should have said no, should have let the silence hang and walked away, but instead I did what I've always done. Fine, I said, my voice hollow. I'll handle it, just this once. Vanessa exhaled like she'd just been saved from drowning. Oh my God, Emily. You're an angel. Seriously, you have no idea how much this means. Then she turned, light-footed, robe swishing, and disappeared back up the stairs. I stood there for a long time, spoon in hand, the soup long forgot. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was weight. The weight of one more sacrifice no one would ever see, no one would ever applaud. Not even a thank you. I paid that first installment the next morning, sitting in my home office before work, watching the funds transfer out of my account. The mortgage was in her name, but the debt lived quietly in mine now. The irony, I didn't even live there. She and her boyfriend were the ones with the granite countertops and the Instagrammable porch. I lived in a tiny rental apartment with thin walls and a dishwasher that only worked when I begged it. But still, I paid. Because deep down, there was still this stupid hope that maybe, just maybe, if I did this for her, it would matter. Maybe she'd tell mom and dad. Maybe they'd be proud of me for once. Maybe they'd see me, or maybe I was just convenient again. The table was set beautifully, like it always was when mom wanted everything to look perfect. Candles flickering low, cloth napkins folded like origami, the good plates brought out for a Tuesday evening, because Vanessa said it was a good day to celebrate small wins. Funny. I'd made the mortgage payment that morning and no one toasted to me. Vanessa, your hair looks so cute like that, Mom cooed, passing the bread basket with one hand while twirling her wineglass in the other. It really frames your face. Did you do it yourself? Oh no, Vanessa chirped. I had it done at that new salon on Main, the one with the rosemary misters and the silent haircut option, so peaceful. Dad chuckled, buttering his roll. That blog of yours must be doing better if you can afford that kind of place. Vanessa blushed modestly, flicking her gaze downward like she'd just won an Oscar. Well, you know, hustle culture, I'm making it work. I passed the potatoes. Not one glance in my direction. Not one question about work, my life, my anything. Just Emily passed the potatoes, as if I were a server in a house I technically helped fund. A silent extra in a scene written for someone else. I smiled. I always smiled. Quiet, controlled, careful not to crack. You should see how much she's grown her following, Mom went on, butterknife gesturing with enthusiasm. She had a reel last week with over 40,000 views, can you imagine? She's really building something, Dad added with his mouth full. That entrepreneurial spirit. My fork hovered over my plate. The urge to laugh was sudden and sharp. They thought she was an entrepreneur, a self-made star. I had the receipts literally that proved otherwise. And still, I couldn't bring myself to say it. Because the second I did, I knew how it would go. Vanessa would cry, Mom would gasp. Dad would fold his arms and ask why I was being cruel. They wouldn't hear the part where I'd quietly saved their daughter from foreclosure. They'd only hear the tone, the accusation, the audacity. So instead I took another bite of chicken, dry, overcooked. I swallowed hard. You know, Vanessa said, turning toward Mom with practiced ease, I've been thinking about starting a podcast, something for women in creative industries. I feel like I've got a real story to tell. You absolutely do, Mom gushed. You've overcome so much. So much, I wanted to scream. I wanted to slam my glass down and yell, overcome what? I'm the one who covered her missed payments so you wouldn't find out your favorite child is drowning in debt while taking spa selfies. Instead, I refilled the water glasses. That's what I did. That's what I always did. Keep the peace. Carry the weight. Refill what others emptied. You've been quiet tonight, Em, Dad finally said near the end of the meal, almost like he remembered I was there. Everything all right at the office? I gave a polite nod. Same as always, and it was. I worked in compliance for a mid-sized insurance firm. I kept systems in order, just like I did at home, just like I did at this table. Well, that's good. Stability is important. Vanessa chimed in. Emily's like a human metronome, steady, reliable. They all chuckled. I smiled. They had no idea how much effort that reliable took. After dinner, while everyone else moved into the living room for coffee and TikTok show and tell, I stayed back to clear plates. I didn't mind. I liked the rhythm of rinsing dishes, the clink of cutlery in the sink. It was the only time I wasn't invisible, at least to the dishes. As I wiped down the counter, I glanced into the dining room. Dad was leaning forward, showing Vanessa some video. Mom laughed too loud. Vanessa's eyes sparkled. It was like watching someone else's family. And somehow, I was still the one paying for the house that held them all. That night, driving home, the silence in my car was heavier than usual. The kind of silence that hums with things unsaid. I thought about speaking up next time. About saying, actually, I've been paying her mortgage for months, just to watch their faces rearrange themselves. But I also thought about how tired I was, not just physically. Existentially, I didn't want applause. I wanted acknowledgement. I wanted someone to ask, just once, Emily, are you okay? Emily, do you need anything? Emily, we see you. But no one did, and somehow I still wasn't done hoping they would. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to blink away the ache behind my eyes. Sleep didn't come, not right away. It rarely did after those dinners. The house was quiet, save for the low hum of the fridge and the occasional car slicing through the wet street below. I didn't turn on the lamp. I didn't need light to see what haunted me. Memory did just fine. It started like most things with Vanessa. She was 5 and throwing a tantrum on the living room rug. Glitter glue smeared across her hands, her sparkly unicorn costume in tatters after she'd fallen off the couch pretending to fly. I want a new one, she wailed, fists pounding into the carpet. I can't go to the party like this. Mom knelt beside her, cooing softly. Oh, sweetheart, we'll get another. You can't show up looking anything less than perfect. Dad was already grabbing his keys. Target's still open. Let's go. No one looked at me, sitting quietly in the corner with my library book and my bat wings made from wire hangers and an old black t-shirt. I remember thinking I looked pretty cool. I'd spent hours shaping those wings, wrapping the fabric just right. But I also remember what Mom said on the way out the door, brushing past me like a breeze. Next year, let me help you, Emily. It looked rushed. She didn't say it to be mean, just honest, just distracted. That was the first time I realized being quiet didn't mean being noticed for your patience. It just meant being forgotten more efficiently. I was 10 when Vanessa won the neighborhood costume contest. She went as Cinderella. Blue satin, glass slippers, a tiara that sparkled in the sun. She twirled across the stage while Mom clapped like she was at a Broadway show. Dad called her our little star. I'd gone as Hermione. I made the tie myself, cut a wand from a tree branch. When they called Vanessa's name, I clapped too. I remember feeling proud of her. I also remember looking over and realizing no one was looking at me. Afterward, I stood off to the side while Mom took photos of Vanessa with the other winners. When they finally noticed I wasn't in any of the pictures, Mom frowned and said, "Next time, smile more, you blend in too much." I started blending in on purpose after that. It was easier, safer. Even when I got straight A's in middle school, the praise felt like an afterthought. "Of course Emily got good grades," Dad said, flipping through the mail. "She's our quiet one." Quiet like wallpaper. I turned onto my side, clutching the corner of my blanket, trying to ease the pressure in my chest. It didn't work. It was absurd, being in your 30s and still haunted by playground wounds. But they never really go away. They just show up in subtler disguises. Like smiling while your parents applaud your sister's non-existent career, or sitting through dinners where your only contribution is carbohydrate distribution. And still, some desperate part of me hoped they'd see me, that they'd remember. It's not like I didn't try to become someone worth noticing. I worked hard, built a career in finance that I didn't love but excelled at, saved for retirement, donated to causes they cared about so they'd have reasons to be proud. I paid Vanessa's mortgage. What more was there? I sighed and reached for my journal in the dark, flipping to the last page I'd written. "I'm the scaffolding that holds the house together, but scaffolding never makes it into the family photo." I stared at the sentence for a long time. It was a therapist's idea to journal what I didn't feel safe saying aloud. Dr. Brooks said it was a way to take up space, even if just on the page. But tonight, the space felt too hollow. I thought back to birthdays. Mine specifically. Last year, Mom had texted me a photo of the new lamp Vanessa bought for their den. No card, no call. That same night, they sent a long message in the family group chat gushing about Vanessa's milestone blog post, her 10th article about manifesting success. No mention that it was also the anniversary of the day I was born. I went to work the next day like nothing had happened. I always did. I was the ghost of the Granger family. Present in form, invisible in function. Except, ghosts don't pay mortgages. Ghosts don't rescue sisters from foreclosure. Ghosts don't calculate escrow breakdowns and insurance overages. I closed the journal and rolled onto my back again, staring at the ceiling fan. And suddenly I wondered, if I disappeared tomorrow, would they even notice? Would they call because they missed me? Or just because the mortgage went unpaid? I almost canceled the session. That morning I sat in my car outside Dr. Brooks' office, engine still running, hands wrapped around the steering wheel like it was the only thing anchoring me. I could have pulled out of the lot. I could have gone back home, turned off my phone, and buried everything under just a rough week. But I didn't. Because something about the way Dad said "you're a useless daughter" last night, after one spilled glass of water, still echoed in my chest like a drumbeat. That word, useless, not clumsy, not careless. Useless, as if all the years of carrying weight for people who never saw me amounted to nothing the second I made a mistake. I turned the engine off and walked inside. Dr. Brooks' office was its usual brand of calming. Earth-toned walls, a muted rug, a diffuser puffing out lavender, and that soft lo-fi music that made you feel like you were in a very well-adjusted waiting room in a Scandinavian drama. "Hi, Emily," she greeted with that calm, quiet voice I used to find unsettling. Now I knew it meant I could exhale. I sat across from her, crossing my legs, uncrossing them, staring at the bookshelf behind her head. I wasn't even sure how to start. I think my family doesn't know who I am," she waited. Let the silence stretch just enough to make room. I swallowed. Not in the dramatic nobody understands me kind of way. I mean literally. I think they only see what I do, not who I am, like I could vanish and as long as the bills get paid it wouldn't change their routines. She nodded slowly. "That's a painful realization." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "Yeah, a little." More silence. Not awkward. Intentional. "I paid Vanessa's mortgage," I said suddenly. "It just came out." Dr. Brooks blinked. "You mentioned she was struggling financially." "No, like I paid it, secretly, every month since spring." Her eyebrows lifted but her expression stayed steady. "Why secretly?" I stared at the floor. "Because she asked me to. She said she didn't want Mom and Dad to worry. She made it sound like this heroic thing I was doing, like I was the only one she could ask." "And how did that make you feel?" "Like I mattered," I said too quickly. Then softer, "At first. And now I feel like a fool." I looked up, blinking fast. I thought maybe if I helped she'd finally give me credit, not even publicly. Just acknowledge me, tell them, say thank you. But instead, she lets them go on believing she's this successful, thriving, creative person and I'm just— I paused, the words catching. Dr. Brooks waited again. I'm just the one who brings potatoes to dinner, I whispered. And just like that, the tears came. Silent, slow, embarrassing, I wiped them with the sleeve of my cardigan. I don't even like potatoes. That got a smile from her, not patronizing, just human. I'm sorry, I muttered, pressing my palms to my cheeks. You don't have to apologize for being overwhelmed, she said gently. You've been holding too much for too long. I nodded. It's not just the mortgage, it's every birthday they forget. Every time they ask me to take their dog to the vet, or do their taxes, or fix their Wi-Fi. It's mom saying, Vanessa works so hard on that blog, while I'm managing millions in someone else's money and no one even asks how my job's going. Dr. Brooks leaned forward slightly. Emily, what do you need from your family that you've never received? That stopped me. What do I need? I'd spent so long needing nothing, or pretending I didn't, that I forgot there were options. Recognition, I said finally. Not praise, just to be seen, to not have to earn affection with silent labor, she nodded. And have you ever asked for that directly? I gave a sad little laugh. No, that would make me look needy, or selfish, or like I was trying to compete with Vanessa. What if it's not a competition? What if it's simply your birthright as a human being to be valued, not for what you provide, but because you exist? Sentence sat in the room like a guest no one knew had been invited. Birthright, existence, I had no idea how to respond to that. Do you want to keep paying the mortgage? She asked quietly. I shook my head. No, then don't. It's not that simple, I argued. They'll find out, Vanessa will have to explain, my parents will ask questions, there'll be consequences. And maybe, she said, that's not a bad thing. I sat in that idea. The discomfort, the fear, the possibility. What if they're mad? I asked. What if they are? She echoed. I don't want to be the villain, she smiled gently. Maybe you're not the villain, Emily. Maybe you're just tired of being the unpaid background character. That line hit me so hard I looked away. I thought if I gave enough they'd finally see me. And I met her eyes again. I think I finally understand. I was trying to buy love that should have been free. The room fell quiet again. This time I let it. 2 weeks passed. I kept paying the mortgage. Every automatic withdrawal landed with a thud in my bank account, more like a bruise than a bill. I didn't tell anyone I'd almost stopped. That I'd cried in therapy, that I'd nearly said enough. I told myself I'd wait for the right moment, for a sign, for someone, anyone to notice. Instead, the silence just got heavier. At the next family get-together, a baby shower for a second cousin I barely knew, the house Vanessa lived in sparkled like a Pinterest dream. String lights on the porch. Coordinated cushions. A bump-ahead banner taped across the fireplace. Everyone kept saying how lovely the place looked. Oh, Vanessa, Aunt Jean beamed, clutching a lemon tart, I just adore what you've done with this space. Where do you find the time? Said our neighbor Mrs. Gordon, eyes wide. Vanessa laughed modestly. Oh, I make it work. Late nights, creative bursts, you know how it is. She didn't say, my sister pays the mortgage while I order eucalyptus wreaths off Etsy and curate fairy tale moments. No one toasted to that. I stood in the corner near the fruit tray, sipping flat lemonade, pretending to admire the diaper cake centerpiece. My parents sat on the couch beaming at Vanessa like she'd built the home with her own hands. Mom leaned in and said, it's just so nice to see her thriving. That word again. Thriving. As if effort and illusion were the same thing. As if borrowed homes and unpaid debts didn't count when you looked that good in a sundress. Later, while Vanessa showed someone her DIY nursery ideas on her phone, I wandered into the kitchen and found myself alone. My gaze drifted to the folder on the counter marked mortgage. I knew what was inside. I'd put it there. Labeled it. Maintained every receipt, every notice, every line item. It sat in her house, my silent signature on every page. A shadow of resentment curled in my gut. It would have taken 5 seconds for her to say, Emily's helped me. Emily saved me. 5 seconds. Instead, she let our family believe she was building something all on her own. And me, I was the guest who brought Tupperware to every party and washed the dishes after. That night, back in my apartment, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and whispered, what if I stopped? My own reflection looked tired of the question. So I opened my laptop, logged into my banking app, and stared at the scheduled payment due in 4 days. I hovered over the Cancel Autopay button, then I clicked it. The confirmation popped up. Are you sure? I clicked yes. The silence that followed was different, not dread, not guilt, it was clarity, no fireworks, no music, just a flicker of something steady. Relief. I didn't text Vanessa, I didn't warn her, because I knew what would happen. Eventually, there'd be a knock, or a letter, or a phone call from a number she didn't recognize. And when the bank asked questions, when the panic set in, when the lie unraveled, she'd have to say my name, not because she wanted to, but because I'd left her no other choice. Saturday mornings used to feel peaceful, my one soft place in the week, but ever since I'd canceled the auto pay, they'd taken on a new edge, like the air itself was waiting for something to crack. I sat at my tiny dining table, the one with the wobbly leg I kept meaning to fix, spreading out the documents I'd organized over the past few months. The folder was thick, neat, painfully meticulous. For them was written across the front in my handwriting. It was supposed to be a safety net, proof. If things ever spiraled, I wanted the truth documented. All my payments, each receipt, every email. Yet even in the privacy of my own apartment, the folder felt incriminating. Like it made visible a burden I had agreed to carry in the shadows. I opened it anyway. There they were, stacked like thin little confessions. Mortgage statements, insurance updates, escrow adjustments, all of it in Vanessa's name, paid by me. "You're good at this," she'd always said when she dumped another bill on me to look over. "You're the organized one." Not a thank you, not acknowledgement, just convenience. I traced one receipt with my fingertip. April, May, June, July, all paid on time. Then July again, the second half, where the numbers started dipping into my emergency savings. I swallowed hard. This morning, I tried to take pride in the orderliness, my spreadsheets, the clean lines of the binder, the sense of competence I rarely let myself own. But the pride tasted faint, thin, because what kept echoing in the back of my mind was a quiet, awful question. If I disappeared tomorrow, would this folder be the only proof I existed? I exhaled slowly and leaned back, letting my eyes wander around my apartment. Small but mine. A space where no one's voice rose above mine, no footsteps stomped, no judgments lingered in the walls. Still, it felt lonely today. On the counter, my phone buzzed with a new email from the bank. A simple subject line, action required, payment missed. I stared at it. My heartbeat drummed in my ears. This was it. The first domino. I didn't respond. I didn't forward it. I didn't warn her. Instead, I closed the email and returned to the folder. I spent the next hour reorganizing everything, hole-punching stray papers, sliding them into place, labeling a new divider tab called OCT, missed payment, even though I knew Vanessa would never create one. She never planned ahead. That was my job. Her life was the stage, mine was the scaffolding. Outside, a neighbor revved their motorcycle. Inside, the silence pressed close, thickened by something I couldn't quite name. Maybe it was the unfamiliar feeling of choosing myself. Around noon, I made tea and sat by the window, watching the late sunlight slip across the parking lot. I felt something shift inside me, subtle but unmistakable, the awareness that I was about to be tested. Maybe by Vanessa, maybe by my parents, maybe by myself. Because once you stop carrying someone's weight, you learn how heavy they really were. I closed the folder and held it in my lap. For them, I whispered. But for the first time, I wondered whether it might someday be for me, too, proof that I wasn't invisible, that I had loved hard, given deeply, tried endlessly, that I was here, and that someone should have noticed. My birthday always came with low expectations, but even then, the universe, or maybe just my family, had a way of finding new depths. Mom insisted on hosting dinner at Vanessa's house again. More space, she said. Better lighting for photos, Vanessa added with a bright smile. Photos of her, of course. I arrived with a small bakery cake I bought for myself, a habit I'd learned over the years, never assume anyone else will. The moment I stepped inside, the energy told me everything, warm chatter for them, courteous nods for me. "Emily, there you are," Mom called, already halfway through a story. "Put the cake on the counter, sweetheart. Vanessa, show your sister the knives." "Knives?" Vanessa beamed and held up a sleek box. "Mom and Dad got me this gorgeous professional set. Look, German steel." I blinked. "Wait, today isn't your—" "Oh, we just saw them and thought of her," Mom cut in, waving a dismissive hand. "You understand." Of course, I always understood. I placed the cake quietly on the counter. A few minutes later, Dad handed me a postcard, a scenic lighthouse, no envelope. "Happy birthday," he said, already turning back toward Vanessa. Inside, 2 words, "Love, Mom and Dad," the kind you write to a neighbor's kid. I tucked it into my purse so no one would see my face fall. Dinner was a blur of praise for Vanessa, her hair, her blog, her creativity, her unique stress. I served myself last as usual. No one noticed. As usual, midway through I excused myself to refill water glasses. A harmless task, safe, something that wouldn't draw attention. But my hand trembled, barely, just enough that the glass slipped. It hit the edge of the table, bounced, and dumped a full wave of cold water straight into Dad's lap. His chair screeched back. His face darkened fast, violently fast. "For God's sake, Emily," he barked, shooting to his feet. "You are a useless daughter." The words hit harder than the shatter of the glass on the floor. Everything went still. Mom froze mid-bite. Vanessa's mouth opened slightly, as if waiting to be fed another line. Even the air seemed to pause, like the house was suddenly holding its breath. I knelt to clean the spill, but my fingers wouldn't stop shaking. My throat burned, but I swallowed it down. I always swallowed it down. Dad muttered under his breath while blotting his pants with a napkin. Mom sighed dramatically like I was the embarrassment. No one said, "It's okay, Em." No one said, "It was an accident." No one said, "She's been carrying more than you know." I cleaned in silence while they resumed their conversation, resumed praising Vanessa, resumed ignoring me, resumed life as if I were a clumsy servant they couldn't replace. Something inside me shifted. A small, tight knot I'd been carrying for years loosened, then snapped clean through. I stood up slowly, placing the broken pieces in the trash. My vision steadied, my heartbeat didn't. I wasn't crying. I was done. Completely, utterly done. Dad glanced at me only when he needed the salt. I handed it to him without a word. And in that moment, sharp, quiet, decisive, I made a choice. Tonight the payments end, not tomorrow, not after a conversation, not after I gave Vanessa one more chance to be honest. Tonight, I gathered my purse. I wished everyone a stiff good night. No one protested. Vanessa barely looked up. On the drive home, the streetlights blurred past like a row of yellow eyes watching me finally walk out of my own shadow. I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. Not in a triumphant way, not yet, but in a way that said, "This time, Emily, you pick you." 3 weeks passed. Quietly, I didn't go to therapy. I didn't talk to Vanessa. I didn't log into the mortgage portal. I let the silence grow roots. Every few days, I checked my bank account not to pay anything, just to watch the automatic draft not happen. There was something eerie about it, like holding your breath underwater and realizing you're not drowning after all. And still nothing. No phone calls. No texts, not a whisper from Vanessa. She either hadn't noticed or had noticed and was pretending not to. Both were very possible. I was invisible after all. That was the point, wasn't it? Then came another Sunday dinner. Same house, same players, same table set with the expensive dishes they didn't buy. I stood outside the front door for a full minute before ringing the bell. I wasn't even sure why I'd come. Curiosity, habit. A twisted desire to watch the machine keep moving without the oil I used to pour in. Vanessa opened the door with her usual breezy smile. "You're early." "I'm on time," I said evenly. She blinked. "Right, well, come in." The kitchen smelled like roasted rosemary chicken and smugness. I stepped inside, noting how everything still looked polished, Instagram-ready as always. A fresh bouquet of tulips on the table, music humming from the Bluetooth speaker, laughter already floating in from the living room. And there it was again. The sense that I was attending someone else's celebration, someone else's life. A guest in a story where I had no lines. At the table, Mom was already midway through a tale about Vanessa's blog partnership with some sustainable clothing brand. I told her, "You're doing so well. It's like you're just built for this era of digital business," she gushed, handing Dad a napkin. Dad nodded. "She's got that modern hustle." I sat down, smoothing the cloth napkin on my lap, barely listening. I was watching. Waiting, would they say anything? Did Vanessa look nervous? Not really. Her smile was a little tighter, her laugh slightly louder. But she breezed through dinner like the payment hadn't failed. I didn't bring it up. That wasn't my role anymore. By dessert, I almost believed I'd imagined it all, that I'd been the only one feeling the shift, until Dad turned to Vanessa as he reached for the coffee. "Oh, by the way," he said casually, "I meant to ask, didn't the bank try calling last week? Something about a mortgage thing." My stomach didn't drop, I was ready. Vanessa's fork paused midair, then slowly she lowered it. "Oh," she said too brightly. I don't think so, I mean maybe, probably a spam call." She didn't look at me, not once. Dad squinted. It sounded pretty official. I answered, but the connection dropped. Thought it was odd. Mom waved it off. "Probably just a mix-up. You know how these companies are." Vanessa nodded, smiling too hard. "Yeah, must be a mistake, everything's totally fine." But her voice cracked just slightly. A thread pulled too tight. I took a slow sip of water. The room felt smaller now, closer. Like everyone could feel the air change but didn't know why. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. The lie was starting to sweat. For the rest of the evening, I watched Vanessa fumble through small talk, her usual confidence dimmed by the edge of something she couldn't quite name, accountability. When I stood to leave, Mom hugged me quickly. "Drive safe, sweetheart." Vanessa walked me to the door just like always. "Thanks for coming," she said softly, eyes darting past mine. I gave a small smile. "Of course," then paused. "Everything's still totally fine with the house, right?" Her jaw clenched for half a second. "Yeah, totally." I nodded. "Great," and walked out. In the driveway, I inhaled the cool night air and looked back at the house I'd helped hold up for nearly a year. They didn't know it yet, but the cracks had begun. Not in the walls, not in the floors, in the version of the story where I didn't matter. And soon, it was going to collapse. 2 more weeks slipped by quiet, almost eerily so. I kept expecting a barrage of texts from Vanessa, a dramatic voicemail from Mom, or at minimum, a passive-aggressive hope all is well from Dad. But nothing came, just silence. Until the email arrived. Subject, second notice, urgent mortgage delinquency. I read it twice. Then again. The language was firm, direct, impossible to ignore. And yet, I did. Because this wasn't my fire to put out anymore. That Friday, Mom sent a group text about Sunday dinner. Casual roast chicken, 5 p.m. Where something warm, the house feels chilly lately. Chilly, the irony burned. When Sunday came, I stood on their front porch with a strange, steady feeling in my chest, like I'd finally stepped into alignment with something that had always been waiting for me. Dad opened the door. "Emily, on time as always." He said it like a joke, like a compliment, like a reminder. I stepped inside. Mom was lighting candles. Vanessa was arranging garnishes on a cheese board like she was hosting a cooking show. Both acted normal, too normal. The kind of normal people choose when the truth is leaking through the ceiling and they're praying no one looks up. Dinner started in forced good spirits. Mom talked about a new recipe she wanted to try. Dad rambled about lawn maintenance. Vanessa chimed in about managing her workflow. I nodded in the right places, smiled at the right moments. But beneath the surface, something trembled. The tension sat between us like an uninvited guest, quiet, watchful, waiting. I kept glancing at Vanessa. Her smile looked stretched thin like a rubber band pulled past its limit. She pushed her food around more than she ate it. Twice she checked her phone under the table, pretending she wasn't. My chest tightened with something I couldn't quite name. Sadness maybe, pity, the remnants of old loyalty. But I didn't reach for the thread. I just observed. Halfway through dessert, everyone settled into a soft lull, forks scraping plates, coffee being poured. Then Dad looked up, squinting slightly. "Vanessa, didn't the bank call again? Something about the mortgage?" There it was, the air snapped taut. Mom turned toward Vanessa, brows pinched. "Oh yes, I forgot, we got a voicemail Saturday afternoon. It sounded serious." Vanessa froze. Her fork hovered in the air, her breath caught. A flush crept up her neck like rising heat. "Oh," she said. Yeah, they've been calling a lot lately." A brittle laugh, probably a glitch. "Glitch?" Dad repeated, frowning. "They said it was urgent and delinquent." Mom looked from Dad to Vanessa, confusion tightening her features. "Sweetheart, what's going on?" Vanessa swallowed hard. Too hard, her eyes flicked to me quick, panicked, searching. I sipped my water. Maybe I missed a payment," she stammered. "I've been really stressed. Work is, well, the blog things have been slow." Dad leaned forward. "1 missed payment gets you 2 certified letters and 3 phone calls." Mom's voice sharpened. "Vanessa, tell us the truth." I watched her crumble in real time, the facade peeling back, the nervous tremor in her hands, the tremble in her voice. She cleared her throat, staring down at her plate. "I'm handling it," she whispered. "It's under control." "It doesn't sound under control," Dad snapped. She flinched. For the first time in years, she looked small. The room buzzed with confusion and irritation. Anger meant for her, not me. A reversal I'd never seen before, not in childhood, not ever. Dad's voice rose. Your mother and I trusted you to handle your finances. We offered help months ago. And you said you were thriving, Mom added sharply. I felt something settle deep in my belly, not satisfaction, not vengeance, just a quiet click, like a puzzle piece sliding into place. The truth was finally knocking. And for once, it wasn't knocking on my door. Before anyone continued, I folded my napkin, placed it beside my plate, and sat back, waiting, watching, because I knew what was coming next. The final thread was about to snap, and I didn't have to pull a single one. Dad's question hung in the air like smoke that wouldn't clear. Vanessa's breath hitched. Mom's eyes sharpened. And I just sat there, hands folded neatly in my lap, letting the silence stretch until it wrapped itself around all of us. Dad leaned forward again, voice colder than I'd heard in years. Vanessa, answer me, why is the bank calling? Vanessa's lips parted but no sound came out. She stared at her water glass as if words might be floating in it. Mom pushed gently but with a tremor beneath the surface. Honey, if there's a problem, you need to tell us. Vanessa blinked rapidly, twice, 3 times, and then the unraveling began. I just fell behind, okay, she whispered, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. Work got slow, everything piled up. It's been a rough few months. Dad frowned. Then why didn't you say something? And there it was, that first crack. Vanessa swallowed, eyes darting left, right, anywhere but at me. I didn't want you to worry, she said. I thought I could fix it before anyone noticed. Mom's tone sharpened. But they've noticed, Vanessa, clearly. Vanessa shook her head, strands of hair falling across her forehead. It's not that big of a deal. I'm handling it, I swear. Dad's voice rose. Handling it, you're getting delinquency notices. And then finally his gaze shifted to me. Emily, he said, did you know about any of this? The room exhaled all at once. Vanessa stiffened. Mom stared wide-eyed. I took a slow, quiet breath. I knew she was having trouble, I said calmly, but it wasn't my place to speak for her. Vanessa shot me a panicked look, wide, glassy, pleading. The kind of look someone gives right before their truth collapses. Dad turned back to her. How far behind are you? I don't know, she sputtered. 2 months maybe, or maybe 3, but I'm catching up. You think, he barked, you don't even know. Mom pressed her hand to her forehead. Vanessa, this isn't forgetting to pay a parking ticket. Vanessa's voice cracked. I didn't know what to do, I was trying, you don't understand how hard it's been. Dad cut her off. We understand you lied. She went still, completely still. Dad's chair scraped back as he stood. His face had gone pale, paler than I'd ever seen. We asked you directly last month if everything was okay. You said yes. I didn't want you to think I was failing, she whispered. Mom's voice broke. We're not angry because you're struggling. We're angry because you kept it from us again. Vanessa looked like she might cry, might scream, might bolt. Her eyes found mine finally. And there it was, the truth she'd been swallowing for months. She knew the next question was coming. She knew she couldn't dodge it. Dad turned back to me again, confusion flickering across his face. Emily, if Vanessa hasn't paid the mortgage in months, why didn't the house go into default sooner? Why, how? I didn't speak. Not yet. I let Vanessa answer. She tried. She really did, but her voice came out in a tiny, broken whisper. Because Emily, she was paying it. Mom froze. Dad's mouth fell open. The entire room felt like glass about to shatter. What do you mean? Mom asked, eyes wide and frightened in a way that had nothing to do with money. Vanessa swallowed again, cheeks flushing a blotchy red. I mean, her voice trembled. Emily's been helping me for months. Helping, the softest lie in the world. Dad turned to me, eyes narrowed, not in anger, just disbelief. Is that true? I lifted my water glass, took a measured sip, and placed it down gently. Yes. The word landed like a stone dropped down a dark well. Mom's hand clutched her chest. Emily. Why didn't you tell us? I met her gaze steadily. It wasn't my story to tell. Dad stared at Vanessa again. And you let her do that? You let your sister pay your mortgage while you strutted around like everything was fine? Vanessa collapsed inward. I didn't, Dad, I didn't mean. He slammed his palm on the table. The silverware rattled. Enough. His voice cracked with something ugly, something disappointed. You lied to us. And worse, you took advantage of your sister. Vanessa's composure broke. Tears spilled over. I was scared, she whispered. I thought she didn't mind. I exhaled softly, barely shaking my head. She did mind. She minded every month. She minded every dinner. She minded every time they praised Vanessa for being someone she wasn't. But I didn't say any of that, not yet, because this, the shock, the unraveling, the truth reaching daylight, this was the moment I'd seen coming, and it had finally arrived. For a moment, no one breathed. Vanessa's confession still hovered over the dinner table like a crack in the ceiling threatening to split wide open. Dad sat rigid, fists clenched. Mom's eyes shimmered with something between shame and dawning clarity. And me, I just sat still, present, steady, letting everything that wasn't mine finally fall. Vanessa wiped her cheeks with the heel of her hand. Look, I didn't mean to let it get this bad. I thought if I could just catch up, none of this would have to come out. Dad's jaw worked. But it has come out. His tone wasn't loud. It was worse, measured, final. Vanessa flinched, voice trembling as she pointed a brittle smile in my direction. And Emily, she said she'd help. I thought she didn't mind, she never complained. Mom turned sharply. Did you ever ask if she minded? Vanessa blinked. I mean no, but she's always been. Her gaze flicked toward me, looking for an easy write-off. Reliable, quiet, convenient, she couldn't say it out loud. Dad leaned forward. How many months was she paying Vanessa? Vanessa looked down, defeated. Since spring, Mom gasped, covering her mouth as if the number itself were too heavy to hold. Spring, that's nearly a year, Dad's stare hardened. Your sister carried your home on her back while you played influencer for your followers. I didn't smile, I didn't gloat. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't shrink either. Vanessa shook her head rapidly. It wasn't like that. I was overwhelmed. I didn't know how to tell you, and Emily has always been so good with money, it just made sense. Dad shot me a look, searching, apologetic, confused. Emily, why didn't you tell us? I inhaled slowly. Because she asked me not to, and I agreed. Mom's brows pinched. But why? The truth rose in my throat, hot, surprisingly sharp. Because I thought maybe this time doing something big would matter. Maybe you'd finally see me. Maybe Vanessa would tell you. Maybe she would acknowledge it. The room quieted. Mom's face softened, painfully so. Dad looked like he had been struck. Vanessa's eyes filled again, but this time with something tighter than sadness, defensiveness. I didn't tell them because you said you didn't want attention, she blurted out. You always act like you hate the spotlight. My voice came out calm, too calm. I don't hate it, Vanessa, I just got tired of fighting you for it. That landed. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. I'm not the bad guy here, she said quietly, but her voice wavered. I was struggling. You know how hard the creative world is. I've been anxious. I've been trying so hard to keep up appearances. I thought you understood. Dad snapped. Appearances. You let your sister bleed financially so you could look stable. Vanessa's tears spilled again. I didn't want anyone thinking I was failing. I thought Emily helping meant she supported me, that we were a team. A bitter irony curled inside me. A team of one, me, I spoke gently. I supported you because you asked. Not because I wanted to hide the truth from everyone. I didn't know you'd let me carry it for this long. Vanessa pressed her napkin to her eyes. I was scared, okay. Mom reached out, tentative. Scared of losing what? Vanessa's voice cracked. Of losing the way you look at me. The room went silent again, but a different kind of silence. A revealing one. Mom sank back into her chair, guilt swelling across her face. Dad exhaled sharply, rubbing his forehead. So you lied, he said, because you were afraid of disappointing us. And you used your sister, Mom added quietly, because you knew she wouldn't say no. Vanessa didn't answer. She didn't need to. For the first time in my life, they weren't looking at her with admiration or indulgence. They were looking at her with truth. And then, all at once, they turned toward me. Not in pity, not in passing, but in recognition. Like they were seeing someone they should have known far better, far sooner. My mother's voice broke the silence. Emily, we didn't know. We should have paid attention. Dad nodded slowly. You shouldn't have had to carry this, any of it. Their eyes held something I'd spent decades grasping for a quiet, genuine understanding. And for once, Vanessa wasn't the brightest thing in the room. The phone rang the next morning. It was Mom. I let it go to voicemail. Not out of spite, just caution. My heart wasn't ready for more apologies I'd have to manage. But she left a message. Hi, sweetie, I just wanted to say I'm thinking of you, and I'm sorry, I really am. Can we take you to lunch this week, just us? It wasn't a dramatic outpouring, just a simple reach. And somehow that made it land harder. Later that day, Dad texted. I looked into that bank thing. You did everything right, you shouldn't have had to. Let's talk soon. I stared at those words. You did everything right, longer than I probably should have. That week, they called 3 times. Not about bills, not asking for errands, just to ask how I was. Mom wanted to know what projects I was working on. Dad asked if I'd watched the new documentary he'd been raving about for months. They were awkward, stilted, like they were speaking a language they hadn't practiced in years, but they tried. And I let them, not all the way in, not yet, but I didn't slam the door either. Vanessa, on the other hand, didn't call, didn't text. She went silent. At first, I thought she was regrouping, finding another angle. But then I realized she wasn't the center anymore, not in this version of our story. Mom mentioned casually over lunch that Vanessa had moved back in with them. She's figuring things out, she said, carefully slicing her sandwich. We told her it's time to be honest with herself, too. I nodded, said nothing. There was no satisfaction in her unraveling, just space, new space for me to breathe. Therapy, I told Dr. Brooks everything. She listened, quiet as always, letting me piece together the unfamiliar feeling that had started to settle into my chest. It wasn't triumph. It was something gentler, something steadier, peace. Have you thought about what comes next? She asked. I nodded slowly. I've been looking at condos, just mine, not someone else's. Her smile was warm, knowing. And what would it mean to live somewhere no one else can take credit for? I blinked, tears threatening. It would mean I'm done paying to be noticed. And I was done, not angry, not bitter, just ready for the version of my life where I belong to myself. A year later, the folder is gone. I shredded every document, every receipt, every quiet plea I once folded into paper and payment, not out of spite, but because I no longer needed proof that I existed in that house, in that role, in that version of myself. Now I live in a small condo on the east side. It's nothing extravagant, but every inch of it is mine. The walls carry only my voice. The bills arrive in my name and I pay them not out of sacrifice but sovereignty. My parents call every Sunday now. It's never dramatic, just small questions, soft updates, and sometimes a genuine "how are you really?" We're not healed all the way. I'm not sure families ever fully are. But there's a different tone to their voices now. Measured, careful, and slowly, earnestly curious. Vanessa moved back to the city a few months ago. We haven't spoken in a while. The last message I got from her was short. I know I messed up. I hope you're okay. I really do. I didn't respond. Maybe one day I will, but not yet. Some silences feel more like boundaries than punishments. Therapy has changed, too. We don't just talk about pain anymore. We talk about joy, quiet ones, like taking myself out to brunch or rearranging furniture just because I can. Sometimes I still catch myself hesitating, wondering if I should explain or justify or give too much. But I stop. I remind myself of something I wrote in my journal the night I moved in here. I used to pay to be seen. Now I live in full view for myself. And that's enough.